So you can see we put a big dent, guys, this weekend with our tomato sale. Good afternoon, everybody. Jill here with North Texas Vegetable Gardening, Canning Recipes, a little bit of everything. Yes, I'm doing some planting today. So, been doing some watching and some reading and some studying. And imagine that you wake up one morning and you turn on your radio and they are telling you that every piece of extra land that you have is going to have to go now for vegetable gardening. You have to get rid of your flowers, you have to get rid of your ornamentals, because it is time to prepare for war. And what Churchill said was that our gardens were going to be the path to freedom. And yeah, that's what it was like during World War II. So you're out there and you're pulling all your ornamentals and you're getting ready to plant your vegetables. They had what they called land girls and land women. And those were women who came in from the cities. And believe it or not, a lot of women and children from London, now I'm telling you from England side, because trying to find something out on the US side is a little difficult, but I suspect that the rations and a lot of what England did was the same. The US did the same thing, but so you had to take in folks from the city. Women and children would go to live on farms with folks that they didn't know, and they would have to learn how to farm, and their children. And these farms would take in these folks, and the older women would do the cooking and the canning, and the younger women were often doing the gardening and working outside. No TV, nothing but the radio, no computer. Everybody seemed to be much more healthy. And a lot of things that were rationed was butter, bacon, pork, meat. Let's see, what else was there? Let's see, bacon. Oh, and eggs. Imagine that, guys. Eggs. So for me, I was trying to reconcile in my mind, why did they ration meat? And it's because it was better to put all their efforts into vegetable farming than trying to get enough feed to feed livestock for beef. So that's why those were rationed. Now, some families would get a pig. I don't know how many, maybe 5 or 6 would get a pig together, and they would have to save their scraps from their garden and scraps from their dinner, and they'd all go in and take care of this pig until it was ready for you know what, and then they would split the pork, and that's how people would get by a little bit there. So in come the Victory Gardens, because Victory Gardens were what they said would win the war, because we needed to feed people here at home, but the best stuff went to our troops who were fighting overseas, and so they got the good stuff. Not to say the vegetables aren't the good stuff, but we could grow it here. They could grow it over there in Europe and in England, and that's how a lot of people fed themselves. Quite interesting on a lot of the recipes that they came up with, because sugar was also one of the rations. And I watched one video where the woman made chocolate pudding and she used grated carrots for the sugar. Now, another thing that they would do is farmers that were growing sugar beets for sugar, they had figured out that they could cut the tops off of those and feed those to the livestock that was left. But a lot of the livestock got cooled off during the war. So I've had some difficulty in finding out what was rationed here in the States. You can find a lot about what was rationed in England. But again, I have a feeling that the States followed suit. So for instance, 1 egg a week per person in your family or who was living with you on your farm. And I think it was maybe 2 to 4 ounces of butter, 2 to 4 ounces of bacon a week, a little bit of lard. And in fact, the grease that people saved whether they were cooking their bacon or other meats, they would turn back around and sell it to the government because they would use that to make petroleum bombs. Is that not incredible? I'm not so sure I'd give up my bacon grease, guys, because that is a big flavor for us. But yeah, so growing their own food and food for the surrounding community was huge. Canning, preserving, these were all necessities. They weren't something that we did or they did as a hobby like we do, or as prepping like we do. It was an absolute necessity for their survival. Could we do that again? Should we go to war? Would there be a need for rationing? Should we go to war? Gosh, guys, I don't know, but I do know that the book of Proverbs says there's nothing new under the sun, and what has been will be again. And so these are things for us to think about and to consider as we're growing our own food and preserving, and maybe taking advantage of sales and canning up meats like chicken and beef just in case. But another thing that people did, I think they said there were like several million, if not 10 million households that by the end of the war had chickens, backyard chickens, for their eggs. But you want to think about what did they feed them, because feed was not readily available. So a lot of kitchen scraps. So your scraps were either going to the pigs or they were going to your chickens, so that you could get more than what your rations were. And that's what people did. And you know, we got chickens. I know a lot of you guys have chickens, but evidently there was a great deal of difficulty finding any kind of livestock feed as the war went on. We had talk here that there was going to be a fertilizer shortage because of the Ukraine thing. And so composting was a huge thing that people did on their farms too. And they would make little squares. They would put their, they'd put like some straw or hay, and then they'd put their scraps on top, and then they'd put more straw and hay. And they would build it up, guys, to about 3 to 4 feet tall and keep it watered down. And that's what they used for their compost in their gardens because fertilizer was not available. And I know we have spoken a lot on our channel about wasting nothing, and they literally wasted nothing. Every scrap went to feed the animals, the livestock, their vegetables is what they would eat. They would even make, take the head of the hog or the head of the pig, they'd boil it down and they'd make like a loaf, and they would eat that. There was all kinds of things that they got creative about during the war. And rations for us here in the States didn't last nearly as long as they did in England and over in Europe. Over there, some rations did not end until I think the mid to the late 50s. That was a very long time, and that included things like chocolate and sugar. But here in the States, we got kind of back to normal pretty quick, and we were also sending a lot of those types of supplies over to our troops over in England. And guess what? They hit the black market over there and they were being sold. But that's how rough things were. Will it be like that again? So the world population is certainly a lot more than it was back in 1940, 1941, 1942. A lot more mouths to feed, that's for sure. So, you know, we have always gardened. I've had a garden probably for 20, 25 years, whether it was small, medium, or large. And we have really ramped it up over the last couple of years. And of course, you guys see some of my videos on us preserving and canning and saving. And I know a lot of you are doing the same, but if you're not doing the same, find you a little spot to start gardening, because it could become a necessity. You never know. And if you don't want to dig up the ground, you can start some container gardening. That was not a big deal, a big thing back in the war. But one thing that was is they grew tomatoes on the table, which was absolutely incredible. And they would use potash as one of their fertilizers and one of their feeds for their tomatoes. So lots of things that I have learned on watching these videos on wartime farms and wartime gardens. Go check them out. As I look around our vast space here of planting, I really realize that without that back acre, we probably could not feed ourselves for a year, guys. We would have to be very selective. I know I see a lot of people that have backyard gardens that say they feed themselves for a year, and kudos to you. I'd sure like to have some more information from you on that. So those of you who are growing a smaller type garden and feeding your family of 4 or 5 for a year, I'd like to know how you do it, because we are going to get busy on that back acre. And we will be canning up, of course, every year, but we are doing more and more and more food preservation, and especially meats when you see them on sale. So they didn't have the modern technology that we do today, guys. They did have tractors and they did have some tillers, and some of those tillers were very large and bulky and hard to use. And guys, their ground, a lot of the ground over in England looked like our black gumbo here. And man, they had to work it. They had to work it from sun up till sundown to make sure that they had food for themselves and food for the market and food for their community. And that's how things were done. So we have all these conveniences. You know, we've got our tractor with our tiller that Greg's going to be able to till that back acre with. We don't really have any kind of machinery to plant the seeds for us. Greg and I have to do that manually, and we will do that. I know that some of the bigger farms have the machinery to do the seeding for them. But for small and medium-sized farms, we're thankful we have a tractor with the tiller on it. But boy, getting on our hands and knees out there and planting seed is going to be hard this year. But we're going to do it. So this is just a little brief video to kind of steer you toward the wartime garden and the wartime table, the wartime kitchen, so that you can kind of get an idea of what you might want to start doing, what you might want to start preparing for. And guys, any of you that have any ideas, let me know, because we are interested always in improving. Knowledge is power, and the Lord says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. So thank you for watching this. We love you all. Take care. God bless. And we will see you sometime this week.